The Year to Live Project Intimacy School. So, this was the second thing that I did on my year-long project to live my life or live the year of 2016 as if it were my last year alive. And I knew that getting in early and getting this idea into my being of what intimacy was going to be a big part of it because it would shape the next 360 days or whatever it may be. I was also coming off of a failed marriage or a marriage that ended and a marriage that I had even felt had a very deep lack of intimacy within it from both of us. So I couldn't control what my next partner could do, but I could control, or I wanted to learn, what my role in it was and what could I do moving forward so that the next time I was in a relationship with someone, that intimacy would be something that I understood. So, a little background. I've fought in a cage. I was a Division I athlete. I was a bodyguard. I was a CrossFit coach. None of which covers intimacy, or what the hell is intimacy? I'm a guy. I like football. Yes, I have some feminine traits. I like poetry. I like to write. I like to read. I like to meditate. I do yoga. But still, intimacy was such a foreign concept to me. It was literally you know, like Russian or cooking or brain surgery. I knew it existed, but I had no conscious contact with it. So I found a guy. There's a little bit of a story to this. I'd actually met this gentleman 2 years prior. His name is Michael Russer, and he is a male intimacy coach. He's battled cancer a couple times, or has two forms of cancer, so he's also completely impotent. So not only does he teach the physical aspects of intimacy, sans the male genitalia, but he also works with people on the more important aspect, which, especially he says the physical aspect is the last piece, but emotional intimacy and relational intimacy. So I had met him a year or two prior when I had a chocolate company, and he and I randomly met, and then I contacted him after and asked if he would work with me. If part of my project I could sit down with him and have him teach me, like, how the fuck do you be intimate? Or what does it mean? Or how can I explore this? Or just whatever you have to teach me, I'm willing to listen. So I went to Michael's apartment, and I was nervous as hell going into this because I had no idea what it was going to be like, and I knew he was going to take me outside of my comfort zone. But he's such a heartwarming guy. He gave me a huge hug, and we sat down, and I talked to him a little bit about my marriage and what I thought had gone wrong with it, and what I had even felt myself was a lack of intimacy within it. My partner was, in my words, actually, this is a longer story short, but a couple months ago, I found a journal. On the day I was moving my stuff out of my storage unit and sort of clearing the rest of all of my possessions, I literally found a journal from 2007, and I opened it up randomly to a page, and it said, "Oh, today I'm really upset. Today my heart is broken. I've broken up with my now ex-wife." This is when we were dating for the first time. So she and I had dated a couple years before we got married. We broke up, and I wrote this note to myself saying, "She's the only woman I've ever been with that is scared of intimacy." And yet I didn't take that idea moving forward and think, maybe this is something we need to work on together. I just listened to her tell me that intimacy and the lack thereof was my fault. So one of the first things Michael did was clear up this idea that one person is intimate and the other isn't, and that intimacy is actually a two-way street, and that we're each 50% responsible for the amount of and quality of intimacy in a relationship. So right off the bat, it was really good and helpful for me to hear that, because I'd been walking around with this notion that I had an extremely intimate partner, and I was the one who had screwed this up by not knowing what intimacy was. And so it helped me just realize that, hey, this was a 50-50 game that she and I were in together, and that may not be true. He then explained a little bit about what intimacy was and the three pillars of it. And I'm going to read this because it's helpful, but he said that he showed me a drawing that had a stool, and there were three legs to the stool, and on each leg was written the word vulnerability, authenticity, and open-heartedness. vulnerability, authenticity, and open-heartedness. And those were the three pillars of intimacy. And without one of those legs, the intimacy stool falls and neither person gets to sit on it. And I'd never had it, I'm a logical guy. I was raised by an attorney who was an engineer. I like, A plus B equals C. So this suddenly took intimacy from this poetic, fluffy, new age idea to, it's an actual thing. It is the confluence of open-heartedness, vulnerability, and authenticity. And so in order to create intimacy in a relationship, and I was going to be creating relationships all year long and hopefully for the rest of my life, intimate and otherwise, that these three pillars, if used, would deepen those relationships. And that would be whether it's friendship, romantic, sexual, physical, partnership, business partnership, etc. That those three aspects needed to be had. And so that was awesome. It was one of the things I took away from and subconsciously swallowed, because even though I couldn't name them, 6 months ago, if he said, what are the three pillars of intimacy, I wouldn't be able to logically put it together. But I took that in and lived that way throughout the year of being vulnerable. It was one of my guidelines of being authentic. I said I'd written that at the top of every journal entry I had made for the year prior or year after my separation was got to be authentic. It doesn't matter what people's reactions are. I'm not responsible for someone else's reaction. I'm just responsible for my own authenticity. And it takes vulnerability to put that authenticity out there, because you're just saying, hey, this is who I am. And you may get that slammed back in your face. You may get like, okay, well, I don't really dig you, so I'm out of here. But in order to have real intimacy where someone knows who you are at your deepest, there has to be vulnerability. You've got to go, this is who I am. And that also then you have to have the open-heartedness, or I have to have the open-heartedness to hear that in return. Say, oh wow, this person is showing me who they are at their most vulnerable. This is probably scary as fuck for them, because it's scary as fuck when I do it, and I know how to fight. I know how to take care of myself. But emotionally, we're all raw. None of us have. There's no self-defense system for emotionality other than not being it or not being open all along. So vulnerability, authenticity, open-heartedness. I did not know that in my relationships prior to that day. I didn't know that was the recipe. And so I was really, really grateful that Michael sat down and taught me this and said, like, hey, dude to dude, this is what intimacy means. And once you get these pieces in place, once you are able to vulnerably, authentically, and open-heartedly communicate, then everything falls in place from there. Then you get to bring the physical in, because you've built upon this foundation. But what we do in American society, especially as a male, I think, okay, it's third date and we haven't had sex yet, so this relationship's not going anywhere. We throw the physical in so fast before we've built any foundation, and then it jumps ahead. And so we force this level of intimacy that isn't authentic, because we both just kind of numbed up to get through this process that we think we're supposed to be having. So it was a really, really valuable lesson. It went on. I think one of the more funny aspects of this, of this project, or of this piece of the project, was when he gave me the hearts to give out. But one thing I want to talk about was another quote he said, which is, vulnerability is the willingness to feel absolutely everything, to feel the highest of highs and the lowest of lows and everything in between. And that was what I was after with this year. That was why I had quit drinking. That was why I'd quit smoking pot. That was why I'd quit looking at porn. That was why I quit spending my day on Facebook. It was why I stopped dissociating and numbing in any possible way. Vulnerability is to feel the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. And isn't that the flavor of the human experience? Isn't that the juice of it? Isn't that what we're all really after? We just may not know it, or we may not be able to admit it or willing to admit it because prior to this, I'd say, yeah, I want the highest of highs and fuck the lowest of low. Let's go from zero up. This is where I'd like to live, and this is how I'd like to feel. But that's impossible. Duality tells us that to feel the highest of highs, you've got to be willing to feel the lowest of lows. And by being willing to feel the lowest of lows, it adds so much more texture and richness to those highs. So that was an incredible lesson to learn from him. One other thing I'll read from you that he wrote is, authenticity is showing up and being real. It's communicating exactly how you feel with no agenda or fear of the response. It's also being able to share your needs and desires without any judgment about whether they are right or wrong. Holy shit. Actually, let me read that again because it's so powerful. Authenticity is showing up and being real. It's communicating how you feel with no agenda and no fear of the response. Imagine that. Imagine just being able to say to anybody, well, this is what I think. And you literally, in no part of your DNA are you worried about their reaction, or do you hold any responsibility for their reaction? It's also being able to share your needs and desires without any judgment about whether they are right or wrong. It's about being able to ask for what you need. Ask for what you want in a direct manner, not in a covert manner. Another one of the great books I'd read in the last year was No More Mr. Nice Guy. And the title makes it sound like it's licensed to be an asshole, but it's not. It's for men who are in codependent relationships or have a tendency towards codependency. And the fear then that their partner will leave them, so they don't directly ask for what they want. And this was me to a T in my marriage. I was so worried at any point that my wife was going to leave because she had in the past, and because I think I had an intuition that she would, that I wouldn't authentically communicate with her and say, hey, this is what I need. Hey, this is what I want. Hey, these are my desires. By doing that, you also then, I would open myself up, because if I actually asked for what I wanted and she said no, I have to risk that. I have to risk that no coming. But if I never asked for what I wanted and never was direct in what it was, then I never had to take the chance of her saying, no, I won't do that, or no, we can't do that, or no, I think that's absurd. So just some other points from Michael. And then the story about the hearts. So he told me these, to get more open-hearted, I'm going to give you these little glass hearts. And if you look at the picture on the post, you'll see I'm holding one. He gave me a handful of them. He said, I want you to walk up to a complete stranger, look them in the eye, take their hand, hold up the heart, and say, I see how big your heart is. I see how much love is in you. And then put that in their hand, close it, keep the eye contact, and walk away. and he told me this, I was like, there is no possible way I'm walking up to a stranger and, first of all, touching them, second of all, giving them a glass heart, or doing anything that encroaches upon their space. But I did do this once. He said, find your own way afterwards, but you got to do it. And I did it too. I was sitting at the beach. I was with a friend, and there was this foreign woman. I think she was German, with her dog. And I was like, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. And I spent like 30 minutes psyching myself up and like looking, was she still there? Was she not still there? Was she there? Was she not still there? And as she was leaving, I ran up and met her on the set of stairs. This is at Mesa Lane in Santa Barbara. I was like, pardon me, I think you have a beautiful heart. And then I turned around and ran away. It was so far out of my comfort zone. And I think, I have no idea what her reaction was, because I didn't stick around for it. But what I would do throughout the year was hand out my, God, I wish I had one, my I'm fucking awesome cards. A card that said, like, I'm fucking awesome on it. And not only that, but was able to learn the power of just direct eye contact and listening without an agenda, and knowing who I was on such a deep level that it didn't bother me when I said to someone, yes, this is what I want. Yes, this is what I'm going to do with my life. Yes, this is what I'm doing this year. Yes, this was what was absolutely brutally, awfully challenging about last week. Yes, this is what I am so excited for as a human being about next week. And if their reaction wasn't what I expected, it didn't matter because it wasn't about them. I'm not responsible for their reaction. So this was perfectly timed early in the year and was of such benefit to me. And I think is of such benefit to all men and all humans, but especially men, because we just don't naturally take to intimacy. I think it's just not part of our DNA. But look Michael up, Michael Russer. And he's got a great TED Talk out there, and you can find him online. And even if you don't, do some delving into intimacy and the practice of it. It can't be read in books. It can't be just learned from you watching this from me. It has to actually be practiced, because there has to be that vulnerability piece and that sort of shit scared piece of, oh wow, this person now in front of me who I'm sharing my life with or sharing this piece of me with, they have an ability to react that's out of my control. And in order to experience intimacy, I have to let go of the control of that reaction. If I say something I know you like, I'm in control of the reaction. But if I say something that's just a wild card, it's just my actual deepest thought and desire, then it leaves me open to your interpretation. Intimacy School. This was one of my favorite parts of the Year to Live project. If you like this video, please share it. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel below and check out the link to the post to read the actual post. There's much more in it, and I hope you enjoy it.